So hi, I'm Fiona. I am a believer in Christ. I would say I was a follower of the person of Christ. I think that's one of my central identities and things of who I am. But that's been a really long journey, as it is for many people, that I'm still on. I'm British and I live in America, which is also part of my identity. I've been in the United States for about 15 years. I'm married to Justin, and I have 2 kids, Ethan and Florence. And my role at the moment is I'm co-founder and CEO of a software technology for nonprofits called Mine. I think the thing that I wanted to go on a journey with you all with is to do with worth and value. When you're telling a good story, you sort of like, you get this sneak preview sometimes. So the sneak preview is, I am absolutely secure in who I am. I am beloved of the Lord. And that is a journey to be able to say that. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how getting to that journey, how that unfolded. I grew up in a home in the northeast of England that was part of a strong Christian tradition, but my family wouldn't call themselves believers in the sense of, I think what we would consider a sort of Christ follower. But the UK has such firm roots in the Christian tradition that I went to church. Really didn't like it. It was, one of the dullest things that we did. But my family were probably is kind of pretty British in the sense of like, we wouldn't necessarily talk about things in any particular depth. I grew up in a household where I think I know I was loved, but that expression of love wasn't it wasn't overly vocalized, and certainly the identity of how that would fit in with a Christ-centered view of love, where you're loved no matter what you do, you are beloved, but that doesn't mean that those things are okay. So in the Northeast, we're pretty known for our ability to grow up partying, and so that happened pretty early in my life as a teen. And when you don't have a strong sense of the value who you are, that can lead to all sorts of behaviors that just reflect that you don't know your value, reflect that you don't know your worth. And so I'd be in bars pretty young, and I'd be out doing things that now I know just really weren't helpful or good for me. That were pretty destructive, I think, to my soul, and from a pretty early age. And I do think now I have a degree in neuroscience and cognitive behavioral psychology. Now I know a lot more about what happens to that teen brain, the ways that I was learning about self during those teen periods in particular, where I would say, like, I just didn't have a value of self and didn't know that I was beloved in the slightest. And so seeking that in guys or in, alcohol or whatever it was, those are the substitutes, right? These really easy substitutes that feel very nice at the time and also very culturally easy to access. I think if you could think about a rock bottom, like in terms of value, I would say it was kind of there. And also I come from a family that would probably quite be vocal about how unconfident they are. My mum in particular would say, no, I don't have any confidence. And that would, I think, be very much in a genetic way and in a cultural way passed on to me. Through all that kind of troubled stuff, at 18, I quite randomly ended up in Japan. And it was pivotal to helping me understand that I think that journey into confidence And there's a wonderful book, by the way, by Ian Robertson about confidence, which really helps you understand how you learn that skill. And it's by doing. You need to do and then learn. And then there's some, he says it way better, but there's a really clear neurobiological effect of action in gaining confidence. But the action of me going 5,000 miles with no phone, it's before cell phones, any of those things, working in a nursing home in rural Japan with one other person who I'd met at the airport in London, and then we were going to live together for the next 6 months. You can't help but be shaped by that. So through all of that and lots of other things, but ended up in a university that was about a year, and then I ended up in a university in Scotland. And on that very first day, I met an old school friend. He met in a phone queue a friend of mine, now my best friend, called Joe. And that night, we went to the pub, of course. I found out that she was a Christian. She was not from Northern Ireland. And I was like, I don't really know what that is. Like, you're religious, right? And the short story of that is I spent a lot of time in Northern Ireland and would go back and see her. And I went to church with her once, which was weird. Why would you go to church if you didn't believe in God? I remember very clearly, it was a very strong Northern Irish accent, a guy saying, "It is the 11th hour, and if you don't come to the Lord, you're going to get doomed." And I just my heart, I think many people, your heart just goes and my heart's really beating. And I was like, no, I will not do this. I will, no. I put my head down and no, I'm not doing it. Weirdly went back the same day. Still went that was an awful experience. And then she was like, oh yeah, and then it's church again. And he did the same thing. And I still, no, I refuse. I refuse to do this. That's the rebellious side of things. If you tell me what to do, I'm not going to do it. But we ended up doing a thing called the Alpha course. Because I'd said to her, I really do want to find out what this thing is that you're talking about. And in the course of that Alpha experience, I think it was about 4 weeks in, it was just me and Joe and John sitting in this tiny little church hall in just below Stirling Castle. And these lovely people who they were like, why are these young people here? I'm sure they were very surprised that we were even there because, we were such an anomaly. I remember watching the video and probably the first time I would say I heard the Lord. And I was like, what are you waiting for? That was my first sort of interaction with the Lord. And so everything from there onwards is the story, I think, of learning back to that very first thing. Knowing who I am and knowing I am beloved of the Lord. But you can't, it's hard to know that if you don't know the person that is loving you. So all of that is the journey. That's only a tiny bit of the journey. Because from then onwards, over the 25 years, however long it's been, is being a huge just wrestling through so many ups and downs, through so many challenges. Coming to the United States was probably one of the biggest ones, of arriving here with a 1-year-old and really not having anywhere or anything or any identity to cling on to. After working very successfully in the film industry, and we just worked on a what then became an Oscar-nominated movie. And so I'm someone who has a lot of creativity and a lot of initiative. But when you're doing that in the backdrop of you've kind of lost everything that you that helps to make you. I lost my job because as in the film industry, you just go from job to job, and so lost the job. I'd lost my physical environment that helps stabilize you. I'd been living in Edinburgh for about 10 years. Lost my church. All I had was my husband, and my husband was struggling a little bit as well. And then I was in this place where I didn't understand any of the ways that this society was constructed here. So the healthcare, the transportation, the healthcare, the education, every part of this was a struggle to kind of understand it. So that incredibly difficult time to kind of walk through. And in all of that, those two things of sort of worth and confidence were always just really sort of bubbling around, I would say, in the background. And when you don't feel like you're capable of anything. So as a mother, I was like, well, I'm failing at motherhood, which is the one job that I have right now. Well, clearly I'm not a great person. And it was a struggle. Like my son had some difficulties. And so, yeah, I was like, well, I'm a failure at everything because I can't do anything. And so at this point, I just wanted to just share with you this book because this book, so the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse, just speaks a little bit to sort of those different identities for me. In this story, it's a very simple story, but there's a boy who's going on a journey. He meets a mole, there's a fox along the way, and then there's a horse. And the boy in the story, there's a point where he just feels like a failure. And so meeting people along the way, just for example, there's just so many little parts in here. As the boy meets the fox, he says, well, I think the mole says to him, well, I think everyone feels a bit lost sometimes, said the mole. I know I do. And so in this story, I feel like an identity with every one of the characters. And so the boy is just going on this long journey and finding these friends along the way. And at the same time, just like doubting, like, I don't know who I am. But at the same time, having these revelations. So even just another one here, isn't it odd that we can only see our outsides, but nearly everything that happens on the inside? And so these stories that we tell ourselves, and so there's a part of me, the cognitive neuroscience part, and that's a whole other journey that I randomly kind of went, okay, well, I really like psychology. I didn't get to study it to the degree that I wanted. And within 6 weeks of decided that, I was wandering on the campus at UTD with my 6-year-old and 2-year-old. And so, and through all of this is a growing relationship with the Lord of now, you know, the Lord is so many things to me. Not just a God, but friend is probably the one that I identify at the moment most closely, because as a friend walking alongside me through all of these things, just the whispers that say, hey, no, like, I think maybe you've got this. And so just the fast forward, there's so many things, but just fast forward, the one of the narratives in this story, the horse is probably the one that knows its identity the most, or is kind of the most sure themselves. Each one of them has value in themselves. But the character, the horse, at one point says, let me just find it. Are you all right? Asked the boy. And the horse says, there's something I haven't told you. What? I can fly. You can fly? Yes, but I stopped because it made the other horses jealous. Well, I love you whether you can fly or not, is what the boy said. And then in the story, the horse unveils its wings. And so the latter part, I think, of my story is the unfolding of wings. So in all of those things that I described, it's been a gradual knowing of who I am. And I now feel like the horse. Like, I know I have wings. Like, I can fly. But I don't tell that to people. That's a weird thing to say to people. Like, because it's weird. But I don't need, it's like I've gone on lots of journey. I've seen so many things. I don't need someone else's convincing that I have wings. Like, I know who I am. I've walked through darkness that's been so dark, and I've walked through it. And I haven't even touched on the work that I've done in nonprofits here, which have been literally like very dark places, or the fact that I worked in Redungeons, which was one of the darkest places spiritually and emotionally that I've ever been in. I just walked through lots of darkness, and I knew the light. I've heard the voice of the shepherd. And so, but sometimes the challenge is the freedom to walk into the fullness of that identity is like, no, I have a life that is way beyond anything we can ask or imagine. And yet we also have to live in the day-to-day. I still have to make dinner and do the laundry. And do that in the context of, no, like I have wings. There's the part of us that is eternal, lives outside of time and space. And we can access that through through Christ. And recently coming back to those early days of being in an Anglican church and coming back to the rhythms, the neuroscience, I think, points us quite strongly that our bodies and our brains need rhythms to help us to ground ourselves in the daily lives, but at the same time, our spiritual lives, we are capable of so much. And so the part that here is, of having wings is like, no, I can fly. And the value of that is, so then I look at you and I know you can fly too. And when I work with people who, particularly who are the most vulnerable or have been the most hurt, I love encounters with people, and I do it every day, of just like, hey, who are you? And I meet people all the time, and I'm just like, hi, like, I see you. And I see that you're the mole who's finding it hard, or that you are the fox who just doesn't want to talk. It's like, no, it has hurt too much. I cannot go there. Or the boy who's just like, I am just on a journey here. And I've been every single one of those things. And at times I go back, like today, I was pretty much, down there today. It was a rough week. But my keenest identity is like, no, I'm beloved of the Lord. And whether someone knows the Lord or not, like, I believe they're made in His image. And so the dignity and the joy that comes from the extraordinary gift that I get to be on earth right now with you, like, that's incredible. And the gratitude that I have can then just spring out wonder and joy and life and peace. And so that's I think my journey of outworking that is like, okay, I just have to keep coming back to like, I know I'm beloved. And do my kids know they're beloved? They're so sick of me saying that to them. Like, yeah, Mom, do you know you're valuable? Do you know your worth? One day that'll land. But then, just looking people in the eye, every single person has an opportunity to look them in the eye and go, you're valuable. You have so much worth. And then what could that worth unfold in you? What are the wings? What would your wings look like? What would the flourishing life look like in you? What an amazing opportunity while we've got breath on this earth to look someone in the eye and go, I see your value, I see your worth, and I also see you're capable of flying.